The Grand Convergence Hall floated in open space, larger than any city humanity had ever built. Its walls were made of layered crystal and living alloys, glowing softly with colors that changed depending on who stood inside. Hundreds of species filled the chamber, some tall and thin, others wide and heavy, some floating, some crawling, some made of light and sound. This was the center of galactic power, where decisions were made that could change entire star systems. Humans stood at the far edge of the hall. They were new here. Too new. Most species barely noticed them. A few stared with open curiosity. Others watched with quiet concern. As if humans were a problem waiting to happen. Humanity had been allowed into the council not because they were strong, but because they were unpredictable. The galaxy respected power, but it feared unpredictability. Elias Ward stood among the human delegation, hands behind his back, posture calm but alert. He wore a simple gray uniform. No weapons. No symbols of rank. He was not a soldier. He was not a diplomat. He was a technical envoy, trained to observe, analyze, and fix systems that did not behave as expected. That was why he had been sent. At the center of the hall, the space parted as something ancient and heavy entered. The air vibrated, not from sound, but from presence. Conversations stopped. Lights dimmed automatically, as if the hall itself understood what was coming. The Jareth Queen arrived. She was massive, towering over every being present, her form wrapped in living armor that flowed like liquid metal and hardened like stone. The armor was dark, almost black, but beneath it ran faint lines of red light, like slow-moving veins. The armor was not worn, it was bonded. It lived with her, grew with her, and according to legend, killed anything else that touched it. Stories about the armor were taught across the galaxy. Entire species had vanished after trying to study it. Weapons melted. Hands dissolved. Even machines failed when brought too close. The armor was sacred, ancient, and untouchable. The Queen moved toward the central platform, each step heavy and deliberate. Every species bowed in its own way. Some lowered their heads. Others dimmed their light. A few folded their limbs inward. The humans followed their instructions carefully and bowed as well, though not as deeply as others. That, too, was noticed. Elias did not raise his head right away. He felt something was wrong. At first, it was only a faint sensation, like standing near a machine that was about to fail. A quiet tension in the air. A wrongness that did not belong. Elias had felt it many times before on ships with unstable reactors, on stations with old life support systems, on colonies built too fast and maintained too little. He slowly lifted his eyes. The Queen's armor shimmered slightly out of rhythm with itself. The red lines beneath the surface pulsed unevenly. No one else reacted. To them, it was just another alien glow. To Elias, it looked like stress fractures under pressure. Barely held together, his heart rate increased. He leaned slightly toward another human beside him, a senior diplomat. "Do you see that?" Elias whispered. "See what?" The diplomat murmured back, eyes fixed forward. "Do not move. Do not stare." Elias swallowed and looked again. The armor pulsed faster now. The Queen reached the platform and turned to face the council. She raised one armored arm to speak. The hall waited. Then the Queen staggered. It was small, almost invisible. But it was real. Her arm froze mid-motion. The red light flared sharply. A deep, low sound escaped her throat. Not a roar, but something closer to pain. Shock rippled through the chamber. The living armor reacted violently, spreading outward, hardening, then softening again, as if confused. Energy readings spiked. The floor beneath the Queen cracked slightly. Elias did not think. He moved. Before the human delegation could stop him, Elias stepped out of line and walked forward. Gasps and alarmed clicks echoed around the hall. Security forces reacted instantly, weapons charging, targeting him from every direction. Elias ignored them. The Queen's armor flared again, brighter now. Elias felt the pressure in his chest increase. the way it did near unstable systems. He reached the platform just as the Queen's knees bent. He placed his hand against the armor. The hall exploded into chaos. Alarms screamed. Energy shields snapped into place. Weapons locked on. Some species fled. Others froze in terror. Touching the Queen's armor was not just illegal. It was unthinkable. But Elias did not dissolve. Instead, the armor reacted. The violent pulsing slowed. The red light dimmed slightly, settling into a steadier rhythm. The cracks in the floor stopped spreading. The Queen straightened. Her breathing heavy but controlled. Silence fell, deeper than before. The Queen turned her head slowly, her many eyes focusing on the human hand resting against her armor. The living metal shifted, not in anger, but in something closer to confusion. Her voice filled the hall, amplified by no device, yet understood by every species present. "Who touched my armor?" she shouted. Her rage shook the chamber. Elias stepped back and lowered his hand. Then did something no one expected. He stepped forward again. "It was me," he said. His voice was quiet. Simple. Clear. The hall waited for him to die. The Queen stared down at him. Her eyes burned with fury, disbelief, and something else. Fear. Her armor did not attack him. It did not harden or strike. It remained calm. "You live," the Queen said slowly. "You should not." Elias nodded once. "Yes," he said. "I know." Weapons moved closer. Security forces surrounded him. Energy blades humming. Rifles glowing. The human delegation shouted in panic. But their voices were drowned out. The Queen raised one armored hand, and all weapons froze. "Explain," she commanded. Elias took a breath. His hands trembled slightly now that the moment had caught up to him. Still, he kept his voice steady. "Your armor was failing," he said. "Not fully, but enough to be dangerous. It was building internal stress, with nowhere to go." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "You claim to understand what entire civilizations failed to learn." "I don't understand it," Elias replied honestly. "I listened to it." A murmur spread through the council. Elias gestured carefully, not touching again. "It was in pain," he said, choosing his words simply, "like a machine that's been running too long without rest. Like a structure under pressure that no one checks because it has never broken before." The Queen was silent. Elias continued, encouraged by the lack of immediate death. "Humans live with broken things," he said. "Our machines fail. Our systems overload. Our worlds are unstable. We learn to notice small signs before big disasters. Our world's ein. Things are watching. The Scifi did. The same for more presenter. Our world's ein. Our machines fail. Our machines fail. The same for watching. The Scifi. He looked up at her. "Your armor was asking for help." The Queen's breathing slowed further. She glanced down at her own armor, then back at Elias. "Remove him," several council voices demanded. "End him, before contamination spreads." The Queen did not move. Instead, she did something no one had seen in recorded history. She laughed. It was low and rough, like stone grinding against stone. "For the first time in centuries," she said, "something touched my armor and did not try to take from it." Her gaze sharpened. "You will be examined," she said to Elias. "You will answer questions. And if you have lied, your death will be slow." Elias nodded. "That's fair," he said. The Queen turned to the council. "The human remains," she declared. "This matter is not concluded." As security forces escorted Elias away not as a prisoner, but not as a guest, the whispers began. Fear mixed with curiosity. A single thought spread through the hall, unspoken but shared. If a human could touch what no one else could, what else could they do? Elias was taken through corridors that few non-Jareth had ever seen. The walls were smooth and dark, alive in the same quiet way as the Queen's armor. They responded to her presence, glowing faintly as she moved. Guards surrounded Elias, but they kept their distance. watching him with a mix of fear and fascination. None of them touched him. The queen walked ahead, her steps steady now. The earlier weakness was gone, but the memory of it remained in every careful movement she made. Elias noticed that the armor no longer pulsed wildly. It moved in slow, controlled waves, like something that had finally been allowed to breathe. They entered a wide chamber shaped like a hollow sphere. Strange instruments floated in the air, made of crystal, light, and matter Elias could not name. This was a diagnostic hall, a place where the queen was never supposed to stand. Her armor was believed to be perfect. Perfection did not need examination. The guards sealed the chamber. The queen turned to Elias. "You will stand there," she said, pointing to a marked circle on the floor. "You will not touch anything unless ordered." Elias stepped into the circle and nodded. His heart still beat fast, but his mind had settled. Fear had turned into focus. This was familiar territory. Not the place, but the situation. A system on the edge of failure. Everyone else afraid to act. Someone had to speak calmly before it broke completely. The queen raised her arms slightly. The armor responded, opening thin seams along its surface. Beams of light scanned her from every angle. Data flowed across the chamber in symbols Elias could not read. "Explain again," the queen said. Slowly, Elias chose his words carefully. "Your armor is alive," he said. "But it's also a system. It has limits. It adapts, but it doesn't rest. Over time, small stresses build up." The queen watched the data streams. "This armor has protected me since before your species learned to shape metal." "I believe that," Elias replied. "That's why no one noticed the problem. It worked for so long that failure stopped being considered." The queen did not answer right away. The scanners paused, then shifted frequency. One of the lights flickered. A low warning tone filled the chamber. The queen's eyes narrowed. "Explain that," Elias swallowed. "That's the buildup," he said. "It's not a crack yet. It's pressure. Like heat. Trapped inside a sealed room." The queen's voice hardened. "And touching it helped?" "Yes," Elias said. "Temporarily. My nervous system synced with its feedback. I didn't control it. I just gave it another path to release stress." Silence followed. Then the queen asked, "How did you survive?" Elias hesitated. This part was harder. "Humans evolved on unstable worlds," he said. "Earth changes constantly. Storms, quakes, radiation. Our bodies adapt fast. Our brains look for patterns in chaos." He met her gaze. "We don't wait for systems to be perfect. We expect them to fail." The queen studied him. Her armor shifted slightly, reacting to her emotions. "Other species have tried to interface with my armor," she said. "They died." Elias nodded. "They tried to force it," he said. "Humans don't force. We listen first." At a silent command, the scanners focused on Elias. Light passed through his body, warm but intense. His muscles tensed, but he stayed still. Data streams changed direction. The queen's eyes widened just a little. "Your nervous system is flexible," she said slowly. "It adapts to feedback faster than most machines." Elias let out a small breath. "Yes," he said. "That's how we survive." A new presence entered the chamber. Several High Council scientists arrived, their forms wrapped in layers of protective fields. They did not come close, but their attention was sharp and hungry. "This is dangerous," one of them said. "The human is an unknown variable." The queen did not look away from Elias. "So is failure," she replied. She turned back to him. "You will repeat the action," she said. "Under observation." Elias felt his stomach tighten. "Touch the armor again?" "Yes." He hesitated. "If I do it wrong, it could hurt you." The queen's voice was calm. "If you do not do it at all, it will hurt me later." The chamber adjusted, shields strengthened. Emergency systems activated, every eye fixed on Elias. He stepped forward slowly, raising his hand. He focused on the feeling he remembered, the tension, the imbalance, the quiet pain beneath the surface. His hand made contact. The armor reacted instantly. Not with violence, but with recognition. Elias felt a rush of information, not as images or words, but as pressure and rhythm. His body adjusted without conscious thought. Breathing slowed. Heartbeat aligned. The red lines beneath the armor dimmed again. The warning tone stopped. A collective breath was released across the chamber. Elias pulled his hand away, shaking slightly. The queen stood taller. The armor shifted smoothly, no longer strained. The scientists erupted into controlled chaos. Data surged. Voices overlapped. "This is impossible," one said. "It is dangerous," another insisted. "It is effective," the queen said. She turned to Elias. "You have stabilized me," she said. "But you have also created a problem." Elias frowned. "I have?" "Yes," she replied. "My armor now recognizes you." The room fell silent again. "What does that mean?" Elias asked. "It means," the queen said, "that you can touch what no one else can." The scientists exchanged uneasy signals. "One human cannot be allowed such access," a council voice argued. "This changes the balance." The queen's gaze hardened. "The balance was already changing," she said. "We simply refused to see it." She dismissed the scientists with a gesture. "Leave us." They hesitated, then obeyed. When they were alone, the queen spoke more quietly. "My people built our empire on perfection," she said. "On systems that never fail. We believed that made us superior." She looked down at her armor. "But perfection does not adapt." Elias listened. "You humans," she continued, "are flawed, noisy, unstable. Yet you stepped forward when everyone else froze." She met his eyes. "That makes you dangerous." Elias gave a small, tired smile. "We've been called that before." The queen allowed a brief, sharp smile of her own. "You will remain here," she said. "You will teach my scientists how you listen to broken things." "And if they can't?" Elias asked. The queen turned toward the stars visible through the chamber's outer shell. "Then," she said, "the galaxy will learn that when something ancient begins to fail." She looked back at him. "It is a human who must be called." Far away, in the council chambers, fear spread quietly from species to species. Not because humans were violent, not because they were strong, but because they could touch what was never meant to be touched and make it work. Elias spent the next hours surrounded by alien scientists, instruments, and systems he had never imagined. The queen's chamber had become a hub of quiet intensity. Floating crystals shifted to follow his movements, scanning him and sending streams of data to observers who could barely comprehend what they were seeing. Every detail mattered: the pressure of his hand, the rhythm of his heartbeat, the subtle adjustments of his muscles. He moved with care, but naturally, because this was what humans did every day. Adapt to unstable systems without hesitation. The scientists tried to replicate his method, following his every movement, every gesture. They studied him with holographic projectors and data streams, trying to analyze the synchronization he had achieved with the living armor. Yet none of them could match it. They tried instruments, vibrations, artificial nervous systems, and even direct neural interfaces. But every attempt failed. Some were overwhelmed and injured, their systems overloaded by feedback they could not interpret. Elias remained calm, his own body a bridge between the ancient armor and the unfamiliar technology around him. The queen watched silently, her many eyes tracking every motion. She no longer seemed angry. Instead, her expression held curiosity and a faint admiration. This human, who had risked death by stepping forward, was showing abilities that no other species possessed, even the ones considered the most advanced. The realization settled over her slowly. Humans were not inferior. They were different, and in their difference lay an advantage no one had anticipated. "Explain again," the queen said finally, her voice smooth but commanding. "How do you do it?" Elias paused, choosing his words carefully. "We listen first. We don't try to control. We don't assume that a system will act the same way every time. We pay attention to small signs before something becomes a problem. That's how we survive, the scientists murmured among themselves. One spoke up, incredulous. But it is impossible. A species that evolved in chaos cannot interface with living armor built for absolute control. Elias shook his head. Not impossible, just unexpected. We grew up learning to deal with failure. On Earth, almost nothing works perfectly. Machines break, weather changes, systems collapse. We adapt because we have no choice. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. And yet you survived, while our scholars failed. Yes, Elias said simply, because we adapt naturally. We are built for chaos. The room fell silent again. Even the scientists were listening now, trying to comprehend what this human had said. The concept was foreign. Civilizations across the galaxy had prided themselves on perfection, efficiency, control. Humans had none of those things in abundance. Yet somehow, they thrived. You will show them, the Queen commanded. Demonstrate again. Elias stepped forward. He placed his hand on the armor, feeling the familiar vibrations, the subtle warnings of stress and imbalance. His body adjusted automatically, moving in time with the living metal. The armor's red veins pulsed evenly, responding to him like a calm tide following the pull of the moon. The scientists watched, noting data points they could barely comprehend. For the first time, they saw a system respond without force or dominance. Elias's method was quiet, patient, intuitive, and effective. The Queen's gaze softened. You have taught them something they will not easily forget, she said. Humans survive where others would fail. You do not conquer by power, but by understanding. Elias nodded. We survive because we notice what others ignore. We step forward when no one else will. One scientist finally spoke up, still in disbelief. If this method could be taught to others? Elias shook his head. It can't, not fully. Humans are wired for it. You can learn some techniques, but without the natural instinct to adapt, it won't work the same way. The Queen seemed to consider this carefully. Then humans are dangerous. Yes, Elias admitted. We can survive where others would not. That can be dangerous or valuable. It depends on what you do with it. For hours, they continued the demonstration, refining the process, noting every detail. The armor responded perfectly under Elias's touch. Its stress dissipated, its pulses steady. The scientists began to accept that this human was not just lucky, but uniquely capable. Slowly, a respect for humans began to take root in the room. Not the admiration that comes from power or wealth, but the quiet recognition of a species that could do what others could not. As night fell across the galaxy outside the chamber, the Queen finally spoke. You have stabilized me, human. You have shown my people that their assumptions are wrong. That humans are something more. Elias felt a mixture of relief and pride, though he said nothing. Words were unnecessary. The truth was evident in the calm pulse of the armor, in the attentive eyes of the scientists, and in the measured tone of the Queen. She continued, her voice carrying weight and finality. You will remain here for now. Your people will be observed, their methods studied. And you, human, will help us understand what we cannot. Elias nodded. He was ready. He had not come this far to shrink back. He had stepped forward once, and he would do so again if necessary. The galaxy had underestimated humans for too long. In the days that followed, humans and Jareth scientists worked together. The humans introduced simple, intuitive ways of approaching systems, ways that prioritized listening, patience, and adaptation over brute force or control. Complex alien instruments were repaired using human techniques, failing mechanisms stabilized, and ancient technology understood in ways no one had thought possible. Slowly, a bridge was built between two very different approaches to life and survival. Word of the human envoy spread quickly through the council. Some species reacted with fear. Others were curious. Rumors circulated that humans could stabilize the living armor of a ruler no other species could touch. Some questioned the wisdom of allowing humans such access. Others quietly celebrated the potential for collaboration. Across the galaxy, minds began to shift. Humans were no longer fragile, impulsive observers. They were something new, something powerful, in a way that no one had predicted. One evening, the Queen summoned Elias alone. She moved with the grace of centuries, her armor flowing smoothly, reflecting starlight from the vast chambers beyond. "Tell me," she said, "how did your species survive for so long with so little control? How did you thrive in chaos that would destroy others?" Elias paused. "We adapt," he said. "We learn from mistakes, from failures. We step forward when no one else does. We trust our instincts and each other. That is how humans survive." The Queen considered his words carefully. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "humans will change the balance of this galaxy more than any other species. Not through weapons, not through fleets, not through laws, but by surviving where others cannot." Elias realized that this was more than recognition. It was a promise. The galaxy was watching, and humans had proven they could face the impossible and succeed. The lessons he taught the Queen's scientists would ripple outward, changing how civilizations thought about technology, risk, and survival. Over the next weeks, the human delegation continued their work, quietly building trust and demonstrating their methods. The Jareth Queen observed everything, often silently, sometimes with a subtle approval that humans were not accustomed to receiving. Elias remained at the center, calm, precise, and confident. Each day, more alien scholars began to understand the value of adaptation, the strength of human intuition, and the power of stepping forward when no one else would. One day, the Queen spoke to the council with a declaration that surprised every species present. "Humans," she said, "are no longer observers in this galaxy. They are stabilizers, capable of interacting with systems and life that others cannot. They will serve as guides when chaos threatens. They will be called upon when the impossible must be faced. And they will be respected, whether others choose to or not." The council murmured. Some whispered in approval, some in doubt. But none could ignore the truth. The humans had changed the rules of engagement. They had proven that adaptability, courage, and instinct could rival the mightiest fleets and the most advanced technology. Elias looked out at the stars beyond the chamber. He thought of Earth, of the fragile planet humans had survived for millennia, learning to thrive despite storms, quakes, and unpredictable worlds. He realized that humanity's greatest strength had always been the ability to face the unknown, to step forward when others hesitated, and to turn failure into opportunity. The Queen approached him, her armor flowing smoothly, no longer tense. She extended a hand not as a command, but as a gesture of acknowledgement. Elias placed his hand against hers, and the living metal pulsed evenly, steady and calm. For the first time, it seemed to accept a human not out of necessity, but out of trust. In that moment, the galaxy seemed smaller and yet more vast than ever. Humans were no longer minor participants in galactic affairs. They were catalysts, capable of changing systems, civilizations, and outcomes with their unique approach to life. And while some feared them, others saw hope. Elias understood that the real work was only beginning. Humans had shown what they could do, but the galaxy had many challenges ahead. Systems would fail, powers would clash, and chaos would rise in ways that no one could predict. Yet one thing was clear. Where others hesitated, humans would step forward. Where others feared failure, humans would act. Where the impossible threatened, humans would survive and perhaps thrive. And in the quiet of the chamber, with the stars shining through crystal walls, Elias smiled, ready for whatever came next. The galaxy would remember this moment. The moment when humanity proved that courage, understanding, and the willingness to step forward could achieve what no strength or weapon ever could. Weeks passed since Elias had first touched the Queen's armor, yet the memory of that moment still resonated through the grand convergence hall. The galaxy had begun to notice subtle shifts. Humans were no longer dismissed as fragile or reckless. Their methods, their ability to survive chaos, were spreading quietly, changing the way species thought about problem-solving, adaptation, and trust. Elias remained at the Queen's side, his hand often brushing against the living metal not to control it, but to stabilize it. The armor, once volatile, now responded to him almost like a partner. Every pulse of its red veins was steady, rhythmic, alive, yet calm. The Queen no longer needed constant protection from her own armor. It seemed content under human guidance. Elias had become more than an observer. He had become a participant in the living legacy of her species. One morning, the Queen called a council session unlike any before. Representatives from dozens of species filled the hall, their eyes wide with curiosity, respect, and cautious fear. No one had ever seen the Queen summon a session specifically to address humans. Murmurs spread through the chamber as they tried to guess what had prompted it. Some expected reprimand. Others anticipated a demonstration. But no one was prepared for what came next. The Queen entered, her armor flowing like liquid metal in the morning light. She stopped at the center of the chamber, her gaze sweeping over every delegate. Elias stood beside her, calm but alert. The chamber quieted instantly. Even the whispers of the council fell away under the weight of her presence. "Humans," she began, her voice carrying naturally across the hall, understood by all through translation systems and psychic resonance, have proven themselves in ways no other species could. Their strength is not in weapons, nor in fleets, nor in laws. Their strength lies in courage, adaptation, and understanding. The council members shifted in their seats, some uneasy, others intrigued. Few had ever heard the Queen speak so openly about another species, let alone praise them. She continued, her gaze locking on Elias. "One human has touched what no being in recorded history could. He has faced danger that would destroy others, and has not only survived, but stabilized systems beyond comprehension. This human represents the potential of your species." The hall was silent, absorbing the weight of her words. Some council members glanced at one another, realizing that humanity was no longer just a minor presence. Their role had changed. Humanity's unexpected abilities had begun to influence decisions at the highest levels. The Queen motioned for Elias to step forward. He did, his calm presence contrasting with the tension in the room. "Explain," she said, "how you can do what others cannot." Elias took a deep breath. "We humans grow up in unstable worlds. Our environment is unpredictable. Machines fail. Systems collapse. We learn to listen, to observe, and to act when others hesitate. We do not control everything. We adapt to what is happening. That is how we survive and thrive." A murmur ran through the council. Some delegates frowned, trying to comprehend the simplicity and elegance of his answer. Others nodded quietly, sensing the truth in it. The concept was revolutionary. Civilization after civilization had relied on perfection, control, and hierarchy. Humans thrived because they embraced imperfection, not in spite of it. The Queen raised a hand, and all attention returned to her. "You will serve a new role in this galaxy," she declared. "You will be called upon when systems fail, when old technology collapses, and when no other species can manage the impossible. You will be the stabilizers." Some council members gasped, others whispered in concern. Humans had never been seen as leaders. Now, they were being declared essential, responsible for preserving order in ways no one else could. Elias remained calm, understanding the weight of the declaration. This was not about power. It was about responsibility. Humans had been given trust, and they would have to live up to it. In the days that followed, humans began training alongside the Jareth and other species. They shared their techniques, careful observation, intuitive problem-solving, adaptive reasoning. Machines that had failed for centuries began to function under human guidance. Systems that were too delicate or too complex for others to manage responded to humans naturally. It was not magic. It was instinct, honed by generations of survival in an unpredictable world. The galaxy watched quietly. Some species were uneasy. They feared the humans' adaptability and unpredictability. Others saw the opportunity. Wars and conflicts could be avoided. Collapsing colonies could be saved. Ancient technology could be restored. The humans were no longer just survivors, they were enablers of stability. One evening, Elias stood in the central chamber with the Queen. The stars outside the transparent walls stretched across the void, distant and calm. The living armor shimmered softly under his hand, pulsing in response to his touch. For the first time, Elias realized how much trust the Queen had placed in him. He had not commanded the armor. He had not controlled it. He had only listened, and it had responded. "You have changed perceptions across the galaxy," the Queen said quietly. "Not by power, but by presence. You humans have reminded us that understanding and courage can surpass strength." Elias looked out at the stars. "We only did what we had to. We step forward when others cannot. That is what survival teaches." The Queen nodded, a rare gesture of agreement. "It teaches more than survival. It teaches leadership. You have shown that humans can guide, stabilize, and inspire. The galaxy will remember this." Over the next months, human envoys traveled to far-off systems, stabilizing failing stations, repairing ancient machinery, and resolving conflicts that had lasted centuries. Their reputation grew. Species, once skeptical of humanity, began to respect and, in some cases, rely on them. The humans did not conquer. They did not demand loyalty. They acted with patience, intuition, and courage, and in doing so, they earned trust that no weapon could create. Elias returned to the Grand Convergence Hall for another council session. This time, he was not alone. Other humans had joined him, each trained in the ways of adaptation and observation. The Queen stood beside him, her armor no longer tense or volatile. It flowed like water over stone. Calm, controlled, and responsive. Together, they demonstrated human methods to the council. Machines were stabilized, systems repaired, and the chamber itself seemed to respond to their presence with quiet harmony. The council members watched, astonished. They began to understand that humans had a power that was subtle yet unmatched. It was not visible in fleets or weapons, but in their ability to survive, adapt, and act when others could not. The Queen addressed the council once more. "Let this be remembered. Humans are the stabilizers of the galaxy. They will be called upon in times of need. They will not conquer, but they will guide. They will not destroy, but they will preserve. And when systems fail, when all seems lost, it will be a human who steps forward." Elias looked at the delegates, seeing a mixture of fear, respect, and hope in their eyes. Humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. They were no longer minor players. They were catalysts. They were guardians of stability, and while some feared them, others knew that humans were exactly what the galaxy needed. As the session ended, the Queen turned to Elias. "The galaxy will watch you," she said. "And when the impossible arises, it will be humans who act." Elias nodded. "We will," he said. "We will step forward, as we always have." Outside the chamber, the stars stretched endlessly. Ships of many species glided silently past, unaware of the quiet revolution that had just occurred. Humanity had proven itself, not through domination or fear, but through courage, adaptability, and the willingness to act when others could not. And across the galaxy, a new understanding spread. If something was too fragile, too dangerous, or too complex for anyone else to handle, it would be a human who must be called. And so humanity began its new role, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as stabilizers, guardians, and catalysts for change. They would face challenges no other species could survive. They would step forward when all others hesitated. And in doing so, they would shape the galaxy in ways no one had ever imagined. The living armor of the Queen pulsed softly, steady and calm, as if acknowledging a promise that humanity would always rise to meet the impossible, and that the galaxy had found a new kind of strength, one built not on control, but on courage, understanding, and the quiet power of stepping forward. The legend of humans had begun, and it would never be forgotten.